before you turned 10 years old, before you could drive a car, before you had ever held a real job, before you understood what a mortgage or an interest rate or an investment even was, your mind was already programmed with a relationship to money that would determine your financial destiny for the rest of your life. You did not choose this programming. You did not consent to it. You were not even aware it was happening. But by the time you blew out the candles on your 10th birthday, the code was already written, and unless someone taught you to identify it and rewrite it, that code is still running right now, underneath every financial decision you make, every opportunity you miss, every dollar that slips through your fingers while you wonder why you can never seem to get ahead. The ancient Jewish wealth tradition identified this programming over 2,000 years ago. The rabbis of the Talmud understood that a child's relationship with money is not formed through lessons or lectures. It is formed through absorption, through the emotional atmosphere of the home, through the words parents whisper when they think no one is listening, through the tension in a mother's face when the bills arrive, through the shame in a father's voice when he says we cannot afford that, through 1,000 tiny moments that a child's unconscious mind records with perfect fidelity and stores as permanent operating instructions. And the rabbis understood something else that the modern world has completely ignored. They understood that this programming can be identified, confronted, and replaced, not with affirmations, not with positive thinking, with specific deliberate practices that have been used by Jewish families for over 3,000 years to ensure that their children grow up with wealth consciousness instead of poverty consciousness. Tonight I am going to expose the exact broke mindset that was installed in you before age 10, and I am going to teach you the Jewish wealth code that replaces it. My name is Rabbi Amram, and for the past 43 years, I have devoted my life to studying the ancient texts of the Talmud and Kabbalah. My grandfather was a respected Kabbalist in Jerusalem. His father before him taught these principles in a small yeshiva in Krakow, Poland, before the war. This knowledge has been guarded within my family for 7 generations. I remember the conversation that changed everything for me. I was 19 years old, sitting with my grandfather in his study late one evening, and I asked him a question that had been bothering me for months. I said, "Zaid, why are some families in our community wealthy generation after generation, while other families that work just as hard, even harder, never escape poverty?" He looked at me for a long time before answering. Then he said something I will carry with me until my last breath. He said, "Amram, the difference between a wealthy family and a poor family is not how much money they have. It is what their children believe about money before they are old enough to question those beliefs. A child raised in wealth consciousness will build wealth from nothing. A child raised in poverty consciousness will lose a fortune. The code is written before the child can read, and most families do not even know they are writing it." That night, he opened a teaching that took me years to fully understand. What I am about to share with you tonight is the complete teaching, the same one he gave me over the course of many evenings in that candlelit study. There are 5 specific poverty beliefs that the vast majority of people absorb before age 10, and for each one there is a corresponding Jewish wealth principle that directly replaces it. The 5th replacement is so powerful and so counterintuitive that when I first heard it, I argued with my grandfather about it for an hour. He sat patiently and let me exhaust my objections, and then he said one sentence that silenced me completely. I will share that sentence with you when we reach the 5th principle, but you need to hear all 5 in order, because they form a complete system. Stay with me through the entire teaching. The moment I understood the devastating real-world impact of childhood money programming was when I was 23 years old. I was counseling 2 men in our community who had grown up on the same street in the same neighborhood. They had attended the same schools. They had similar intelligence, similar work ethic, similar opportunities. By every external measure, they should have had similar financial outcomes. One of them had built a thriving business and was providing abundantly for his family. His home was modest but comfortable. His children were educated. His future was secure. The other was drowning in debt, working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, and still falling further behind every single month. His marriage was cracking under the pressure, his health was deteriorating, his eyes carried the particular exhaustion of a man who is running as fast as he can and watching the ground move backward beneath him. When I sat with each of them separately and asked about their childhood experiences with money, the difference was staggering. The successful man told me that his father discussed business openly at the dinner table every Friday night, that his mother involved him in household budgeting as a young boy, that money was treated as a tool to be understood and mastered, the way you would teach a child to understand and master any important skill. The struggling man told me that money was never discussed in his home except during arguments that he could hear through the walls of his bedroom at night, that his parents fought about bills behind closed doors with voices that swung between rage and despair, that the phrase "we cannot afford" that was the most common sentence of his childhood, spoken with a heaviness that made the words feel like a life sentence rather than a temporary condition. Same street, same neighborhood, same schools, same city. Completely opposite financial outcomes. The only difference was the code that was written before age 10. The only difference was what their sleeping, absorbing, recording minds had been fed during those critical years when the foundation of every future financial decision was being poured. If this is already making you think about your own childhood, subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications. Every week I share ancient Jewish wisdom about wealth and prosperity that has been guarded for generations. Subscribe now, because what I am about to reveal tonight could explain every financial struggle you have ever had. Let me describe the 5 poverty beliefs that were programmed into you, and as I describe each one, pay attention to the feeling in your body. If you feel a tightness in your chest or a knot in your stomach, that is your nervous system, recognizing programming it has been carrying for decades. That recognition is the first step toward freedom. The first poverty belief. Money is scarce, and there is never enough. This belief is installed through the emotional atmosphere of the home long before a child can understand economics. When a parent's face tightens every time a bill arrives, when the answer to every request is "we cannot afford it," said with heaviness and resignation rather than with strategic explanation, when groceries are purchased with visible anxiety, when the electricity bill is discussed in whispers, a child absorbs all of this and forms a core belief that money is a finite, scarce, threatening thing that causes pain and must be feared. This belief becomes the lens through which every future financial experience is filtered. The Talmud teaches a radically different first principle. In Tractate Ta'anet 9a, the rabbis declare that the world was created with enough abundance for every person. The Hebrew concept of shefa, divine overflow, teaches that abundance is the default state of creation, not scarcity. Scarcity is not reality. Scarcity is a distortion created by human misalignment with the principles that govern the flow of prosperity. Jewish families that follow this tradition teach their children from the earliest age that there is enough, not through naive optimism, but through a fundamental worldview that treats abundance as the natural state and scarcity as a problem to be solved through wisdom and discipline, not feared and submitted to. When a Jewish child asks for something the family cannot currently afford, the Talmudic parent does not say, "we cannot afford it," with shame. They say, "we are choosing to use our resources differently right now, and here is why." The child learns that money is a tool of choice, not a source of fear. That is a completely different code being written. The second poverty belief. Rich people are bad, greedy, or dishonest. This belief is installed through casual comments that parents and community members make without realizing the impact. Statements like, "money is the root of all evil," or "rich people got that way by stepping on others," or "we may not have money, but at least we have our integrity." A child hearing these messages absorbs a devastating equation. Wealth equals moral corruption, and since every child wants to be seen as good by their parents, the child unconsciously commits to staying poor in order to remain morally pure. This belief operates entirely below conscious awareness and sabotages financial success for decades. The Talmudic wealth code replaces this with a principle that would shock most people. In Tractate Kedushin 49b, the rabbis state that 10 measures of wealth were given to the world, and the land of Israel received the majority. Wealth in Jewish tradition is not morally suspect. It is a divine gift. The Talmud goes further. In Tractate Shabbat 25b, the rabbis define a wealthy person as one who has pleasure from their wealth, not guilt, not shame, pleasure. Jewish children raised in this tradition learn that wealth is a responsibility and a blessing, not a moral stain. They learn that the truly righteous person is not the one who rejects wealth, but the one who builds it wisely, uses it generously, and passes it forward with intention. A child raised with this code does not sabotage their own financial success to prove their goodness. They pursue it as an expression of their goodness. Write in the comments right now these exact words. I release the belief that wealth is wrong. I read every comment personally, and this declaration is the first crack in programming that may have been controlling your financial life for decades. The third poverty belief. Talking about money is shameful or inappropriate. This is perhaps the most destructive belief of all because it prevents every other financial problem from being addressed. In most homes, money is discussed less openly than almost any other topic. Children grow up in an atmosphere where financial reality is hidden, whispered about, or avoided entirely. And from this silence, the child draws a devastating conclusion. Money is shameful. Money is dangerous. Money is something that good, normal people do not discuss openly. This belief creates adults who cannot negotiate their salary because talking about money feels vulgar. Adults who cannot discuss finances with their spouse without the conversation collapsing into anxiety or argument. Adults who make catastrophic financial decisions in isolation because they are too ashamed to ask for guidance. The Talmudic wealth code is the exact opposite. As I have taught in previous teachings on this channel, the Jewish dinner table is the first classroom of wealth. In Tractate Kedushin 29a, the Talmud explicitly lists teaching a child economic self-sufficiency among a parent's most sacred obligations. Money is discussed openly, regularly, and without shame in traditional Jewish homes. Children witness negotiations. Children participate in charitable giving. Children are included in financial decisions at age-appropriate levels. By the time they enter adulthood, they have had thousands of financial conversations in a safe, supportive, educational environment. The code written in these children says money is a normal part of life that wise people discuss openly and manage deliberately. Compare that to the code written in a child who grew up in silence and ask yourself which child is more likely to build lasting wealth. The fourth poverty belief. Your financial future is determined by external forces beyond your control. This belief is installed when children hear their parents blame the economy, the government, their employer, their bad luck, their family background, or any other external factor for their financial situation. The child absorbs the message that financial outcomes are things that happen to you, not things you create. This produces an adult with what psychologists call an external locus of control around money, a deep conviction that their financial life is governed by forces they cannot influence. This adult does not take decisive financial action because they believe, at the deepest level, that it would not matter if they did. The world decides, not them. The Talmudic wealth code installs the opposite operating system. In Tractate Bereshot 33b, the rabbis teach that everything is in the hands of heaven except the fear of heaven. This principle, applied to finances, means that while external conditions exist and matter, your response to those conditions is entirely within your control. Jewish families teach their children through centuries of living example that prosperity can be built in any economy, in any country, under any government, through any persecution. The evidence is overwhelming. Jewish communities have rebuilt wealth from nothing after the destruction of the temple, after the expulsions from Spain, after the pogroms of Eastern Europe, after the Holocaust itself. Children raised in this tradition absorb a code that says external conditions are challenges to be navigated, not destiny to be accepted. Their financial future is their responsibility and their creation. And that code produces adults who act with agency, who make decisions with conviction, and who build wealth regardless of circumstances. Pause right now and write in the comments, "My financial future is mine to create." This declaration directly confronts and begins to overwrite the fourth poverty belief. Share it publicly because accountability accelerates transformation. Now we arrive at the fifth poverty belief, the deepest one, the one that operates so far beneath the surface of consciousness that most people live their entire lives without ever identifying it. And for this belief, my grandfather gave me a replacement principle so counterintuitive that I argued with him for an hour the night he taught it to me. The fifth poverty belief: you do not deserve wealth. This belief is the foundation upon which all the other poverty beliefs rest. It is installed not through any single statement, but through the accumulated weight of a childhood in which money was associated with pain, shame, conflict, secrecy, and fear. A child who grows up watching money cause suffering, who grows up hearing that wanting money is greedy, who grows up in an environment where financial struggle is treated as noble and wealth is treated as suspect, absorbs a belief so deep that it becomes part of their identity. I am not the kind of person who has money. I do not deserve abundance. People like me do not become wealthy. This belief does not announce itself. It operates silently, invisibly, sabotaging every financial effort from below, like termites eating the foundation of a house. You can build and build and build on top of it, but the structure always eventually collapses because the foundation cannot hold it. This is the belief my grandfather addressed with the principle that silenced me. He said, Amram, the Talmud in Tractate Niddah 31a teaches that there are three partners in the creation of every human being: the Father, the Mother, and the Holy One. Blessed be He. If God is your partner in creation, then you were created with divine intentionality. You are not an accident. Your existence is not a mistake. And if you were created with divine purpose, then the resources necessary to fulfill that purpose are your birthright, not a luxury, not an indulgence, your birthright. Rejecting wealth is not humility. It is the rejection of the resources God prepared for you to fulfill the mission you were created for. I sat in silence for a long time after he said that. I could feel something shifting inside me, something deep and structural, like a wall that had been standing for my entire life developing its first crack. He watched me process it, and then he said the sentence that silenced all my objections permanently. He said, Amram, a man who believes he does not deserve wealth has made himself judge over God's allocation, and that is not humility, that is arrogance dressed in rags. That sentence rearranged something in my core that has never shifted back. The Talmudic wealth code for this fifth principle is the most important of all. You deserve abundance, not because you are greedy, not because you are materialistic, not because you want to hoard or display or consume. You deserve abundance because you were created with purpose, and purpose requires resources. A doctor cannot heal without instruments, a teacher cannot educate without materials, a builder cannot construct without tools, and you cannot fulfill the unique purpose you were placed on this earth to fulfill without the financial resources that make fulfillment possible. Every Jewish child raised in this tradition absorbs a code that says you are here for a reason, and the wealth you build is fuel for that reason. This is not a license for greed. It is a mandate for responsible abundance. This produces adults who pursue wealth without guilt, who build with conviction, who accumulate without shame, and who give with joy because their abundance is not an accident to be apologized for, but a sacred responsibility to be honored. They do not hoard wealth fearfully. They deploy it purposefully, and the difference between those two orientations is the difference between a life of financial anxiety and a life of financial freedom. Let me tell you what happens when someone identifies these 5 poverty beliefs in themselves and begins the process of replacement. I have witnessed this transformation thousands of times over 4 decades, and the pattern is remarkably consistent. The first response is usually anger. Anger at the realization of what was done to them without their knowledge or consent. Anger at the years lost to programming they never chose. This anger is natural and it is healthy. It means the identification is real. It means you are seeing the code clearly for the first time. The second response is grief. Grief for the opportunities missed because you were operating from a code designed to keep you small. Grief for the wealth that could have been built if someone had given you the right foundation. Grief for the relationship with money that could have been peaceful and productive instead of painful and paralyzing. Grief for the years spent struggling against an invisible opponent you could not even name. This grief is also natural and necessary. It is the emotional cost of waking up to the truth. Do not rush past it. Do not suppress it. Feel it fully, and then let it become fuel for what comes next. The third response, and this is where the transformation truly begins, is determination. The determination to rewrite the code, not just for yourself, but for your children and their children after them. Because the most devastating thing about poverty programming is not what it does to you. It is what it does to every generation that follows you if you do not break the chain. Every one of these 5 beliefs, if left unexamined, will be transmitted to your children through the same invisible process that installed them in you. The silence continues. The shame continues. The scarcity continues. Generation after generation, until someone has the courage to stop, to examine, to identify, and to deliberately install a different code. Let me share something deeply personal. When my own children were young, I discovered with horror that despite decades of studying these principles, despite sitting at my grandfather's feet and absorbing his wisdom for 20 years, I was unconsciously transmitting some of the same poverty beliefs I had absorbed from the wider culture outside my grandfather's home. The programming of the modern world is relentless. It seeps in through television, through conversations with neighbors, through the ambient anxiety of a society built on financial fear. I caught myself saying, "We cannot afford that" to my daughter without any explanation, using the exact same tone of heaviness and finality that I had heard from other families growing up. I caught myself tensing when bills arrived, my shoulders rising toward my ears involuntarily, my jaw tightening. I caught myself avoiding money conversations with my wife in front of the children, recreating the exact silence I had spent my career teaching others to break. My grandfather's programming was strong, but the ambient programming of the modern world had seeped in through cracks I had not noticed. The moment I identified it, I changed course immediately. I began the deliberate practice of installing the Talmudic wealth code in my home. I discussed money openly at the dinner table. I involved my children in financial decisions. I told them stories about our family's history of building and rebuilding wealth. I taught them that abundance was their birthright and that pursuing it was not greedy but responsible. And I watched over the following years as my children developed a relationship with money that was fundamentally different from most of their peers. Calmer, more confident, more strategic, more generous. They did not fear money. They did not worship it. They understood it. And that understanding was the greatest financial inheritance I could possibly give them, worth more than any amount I could leave in a trust. Over 43 years, I have watched thousands of people go through this process of identifying their poverty programming and replacing it with the Talmudic wealth code. The results follow a consistent pattern. In the first weeks, there is emotional turbulence as old beliefs are confronted and released. In the first months, financial behavior begins to change as new beliefs take hold. Spending becomes more intentional. Saving becomes more natural. Opportunities that were previously invisible become apparent. Conversations about money that were previously impossible become normal. And over the first year, the cumulative effect of operating from a different code produces financial outcomes that feel disproportionate to the effort involved. Not because magic occurred, but because the same effort applied through a wealth consciousness instead of a poverty consciousness produces fundamentally different results. A seed planted in fertile soil grows. The same seed planted in poisoned soil dies. The effort of planting is identical. The soil makes all the difference. Let me remind you of the 5 poverty beliefs and their Talmudic replacements. First, money is scarce. replaced by shefa, the understanding that abundance is the natural state of creation. Second, rich people are bad, replaced by the Talmudic teaching that wealth is a divine gift to be used with wisdom and joy. Third, talking about money is shameful, replaced by the sacred obligation to discuss finances openly and educate children deliberately. Fourth, your financial future is determined by external forces, replaced by the principle that your response to conditions is entirely within your control. And fifth, the deepest of all, you do not deserve wealth, replaced by the understanding that abundance is your birthright because you were created with divine purpose that requires resources to fulfill. These 5 replacements form the Jewish wealth code. They are not affirmations to be repeated mindlessly. They are operating principles to be lived daily, discussed openly, practiced deliberately, and transmitted intentionally to the next generation. They have been refined across 3,000 years of Jewish experience, tested through every imaginable circumstance, and proven by the extraordinary financial resilience of a community that represents a fraction of a percent of the world's population but has built a vastly disproportionate share of its wealth. The code that was written in you before age 10 is not your destiny. It is your starting point, and starting points can be changed. They can be rewritten. They can be replaced with something truer, something wiser, something that serves you instead of imprisoning you. But only if you choose to do the work. Only if you have the courage to look at the code, identify it honestly, and begin the deliberate process of installing something better. That process starts tonight. It starts with awareness. And awareness starts with the decision to stop running the old program and start writing a new one. If this teaching exposed something inside you that you have been carrying since childhood, subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications. Every week I share ancient Jewish wisdom about wealth, prosperity, and financial transformation that has been guarded within families for generations. Leave a comment right now and write, "I rewrite my wealth code starting today." I read every single comment, and your public declaration is the first line of new code being written over programming that has controlled your financial life for decades. If you know someone who grew up in a home where money was feared, hidden, or fought over, someone who works hard but carries an invisible weight they cannot name, share this video with them right now. The 5 beliefs I exposed tonight might be the explanation they have been searching for their entire adult life. And hit the like button so this ancient wisdom reaches every person who deserves to understand why they struggle and how to finally stop. May you find the courage to look at the code that was written in you without your consent. May you grieve what was lost and then release it. May you replace every belief that was installed in fear with a principle that was forged in wisdom. May your children grow up hearing a different story about money than the one you heard. And may the wealth code of the Talmud, tested across 3,000 years and proven in every circumstance, become the operating system of your financial life from this night forward. Shalom.